Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Today, I'm here with the first What's Next video of this NBA cycle. If you didn't know, last year, I made a video every single time a team got eliminated from the playoffs and called it What's Next, talking about what some of the narratives are, what they need to do in the offseason, and some of the decisions that they have to try and make. And weirdly enough, the first team is the Brooklyn Nets. I did not expect them to be the first team eliminated from the playoffs at all, but here we are. The Boston Celtics swept them. Kevin Durant really underperformed in the first three games, but kind of showed up in the fourth game. Kyrie showed out in the first game and kind of disappeared for the next three. Ben Simmons didn't play. There's a lot of question marks surrounding this Nets team that had championship aspirations coming into the year, but due to weird situations with Kyrie Irving's vaccination status, Kevin Durant's injury, the midseason trade of James Harden for Ben Simmons, a lot of stuff kind of just went wrong. So let's talk about what is next for the Brooklyn Nets. Please leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy the video. I'm trying to hit 10K subs before the end of the playoffs, as I've mentioned in my past few videos. Y'all have been amazing. Continue to support. It means the world to me. So, starting off with probably the biggest thing that they need to look at is Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, of course, is a free agent in this upcoming offseason, and by that I mean he has a player option that he is certainly going to turn down because he can make way more money. So Kyrie's basically going to be a free agent. And in his post-game press conference, Kyrie kind of reassured everyone, I want to be here, I want to be with Kevin Durant, I want to help lead this team to a championship, and I know he said that in the past. We had with the Boston Celtics, Kyrie Irving saying things that are pretty similar, but that was at the beginning of the season rather than the end, and by the end of Kyrie's Boston tenure, he was saying stuff like, oh, we'll see where I go, like where things take me. It was a lot more ominous. This one feels very concrete, and I really don't see Kyrie Irving dipping on Kevin Durant that quickly. I just don't think it happens, especially when the Nets let him come back and play. Maybe if he didn't play most of this season at all due to the vaccination thing, then maybe Kyrie would have a little more contempt. But I think those things are kind of resolved, so I do expect Kyrie Irving to be back. So Kyrie and Kevin Durant, having those two on your team going into next season, they're already going to be in the thick of things, trying to compete in that Eastern Conference. However, there are a lot more things that we need to think about in terms of this roster and their future that could kind of figure out whether they're in that top tier or maybe a tier below, because there are a lot of great teams in the East. Sixers, Celtics, Bucks, Heat, those teams, and then you have a lot of teams that are up and coming. In maybe the Chicago Bulls make another move. The Cleveland Cavaliers are getting better. You've got the Raptors if they make another move. So there is a lot of competitiveness in that Eastern Conference that the Nets need to continue to keep up with. So the first thing that kind of a lot of people looked at after this series is Steve Nash. Is he the answer at head coach? And to be honest, I don't know if he is. Steve Nash, through his first couple seasons, has not really impressed me. I haven't seen a lot with kind of X's and O's. It kind of just feels like he's there, which is not super surprising considering the comments that Kyrie made when Steve Nash was hired, saying some nights I could be coach, KD could be coach, Nash will be coach. It just seems like a weird scenario. I don't think he's necessarily a bad coach. I just haven't been super impressed with what I have seen from him. Now, given Nash has had to work with a lot of crazy stuff, as we mentioned, all the stuff this year between Kyrie, KD's injury, Joe Harris getting hurt, the midseason trade. Then you've got all the things last season with Harden and Kyrie both getting injured in that playoff run. So he's had to deal with a lot. So I don't think that it would be... I just don't think firing Nash right now maybe is the best move. I think maybe you could give him a little bit in the next season and then see. You definitely could fire him if you were mad about this underperformance, which they did underperform. But overall, I think Nash, firing him, it might be a little premature. Like I said, I don't really know if he's the answer, but right now I think it's too early to tell with all of the crazy stuff that he's been put through in his first two seasons as an NBA head coach, not just in Brooklyn, but ever being an NBA coach. So Nash, while I haven't been super impressed, I think it's a little too early to straight up fire him. I don't think the Nets are going to do that. It seemed like Kyrie and Kevin Durant really had his back in the post-game interviews after they got swept, so I do think Nash will be back. Then you've got the Ben Simmons situation, which you might be saying, what's the situation with him? An article came out today from Shams talking a little bit more about how Ben Simmons was supposed to come back for game 4 and he decided not to, how he had this month of, oh, my back's feeling okay. Then all of a sudden it started to flare up right before his return, how he talked to the front office about how he's not mentally there yet to get back on the court. And ultimately how a lot of people in the Nets locker room and the front office were kind of stunned by the fact that Ben Simmons wasn't going to play in game 4, or even if he didn't play, at least suit up, be in a uniform, ready to go in case the team needs them, maybe give them a couple minutes if they need it. But no, he didn't end up playing. He kind of just sat out, and I don't even believe he was on the bench, if I recall correctly. That might be wrong, but I don't believe he was. So there's already a lot of weird stuff that eerily mirrors what's been happening in Philly this whole year with Ben Simmons. Now, I do think it's different because, of course, the reason why he's been sitting out and the mental issues that he cited came from that Game 7 in Philly, that last playoff run where he didn't shoot the ball against Trae Young and everything like that. And so I think being in this new situation, I don't think that that's going to necessarily persist. But if this back soreness thing really is real, and already if he's starting to rub teammates the wrong way, what happens? Because we've seen teammates kind of call out Ben Simmons in the past, and he hasn't responded super well. So what's going to happen with Ben Simmons? Is he going to be healthy? With this back issue, this is something that could linger a lot heading into the further, like as he goes more into his career. Back issues typically don't go away pretty easily. So if he's not able to stay healthy, then what does that trade have looked like from the whole James Harden, Ben Simmons thing? Because on paper, Ben Simmons could be a really good fit. And I do think that hopefully he will be healthy going into next year, having that off season. He should theoretically be ready to go starting next year. And if him and KD and Kyrie get that time to gel together, I think they really could be a massive force out there in the Eastern Conference. But if Ben Simmons misses more time, if he's not ready to play, whether it's because of mental or physical ailments, that could really take away a lot from their season. We've already seen their first 2 years together as a core, KD and Kyrie, with both of them healthy, be derailed by injuries. In fact, that first year even where KD didn't play because of that injury to his Achilles. So this is now a third year where injuries have kind of derailed this team, and it's starting to look like a trend. So if Ben Simmons isn't able to stay healthy or at least get healthy, it could really take away from what this team's able to do. So Ben Simmons' situation is definitely something to keep an eye on. In terms of their overall roster construction, of course, you're going to have Ben Simmons, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant as your big three, but on the peripherals, there is some movement needs to be made. They are not able to keep up, especially with like the size of some of the teams out east. They're not going to be able to keep up with Boston, with Horford and Williams. They couldn't keep up with Embiid. They couldn't keep up with like a Bam Adebayo probably in Miami if they face them in a series. Cleveland's got great size with Mobley and Jarrett Allen, Giannis Antetokounmpo on the Bucks. There's just a lot of great size out there in the Eastern Conference, and right now their big men just aren't up to par. They've got Andre Drummond, he showed in Philly he can be a pretty solid backup big, but at this point I don't think he's going to be your championship level starting center. They've got Nick Claxton, who's fun, and he's a young guy, so it's going to take him a little more time to develop. We just saw last night where he started last night's playoff game 0 for 9 from the free throw line, which is the most free throws to start a game without hitting one in NBA playoff history. So not a great moment from him. I do like Nick Claxton, though. I think he's a fun defender. I think that he has a lot of versatility, but he's going to be a restricted free agent, so they're going to have to re-sign him. And even then, I don't think he can be their starting center, so they've got to bring in a big. And that's the question of where do they get one? Do they try and trade for like a Miles Turner? In fact, do they even have the assets to trade for him? They did bring in a couple picks from Philly in that James Harden, Ben Simmons swap, but are they going to be able to go out and get a guy like him? Are those picks even that valuable with Joel Embiid on the team in Philly? How valuable are those picks actually going to be to a team like the Pacers that are trying to rebuild and have even said that Miles Turner could be in their future plans, so who knows on that front. In terms of other centers that are available, there's not a lot of great options out there. It seems like most teams are pretty comfortable with their centers right now, but they've got to go out and get someone, because Drummond and Claxton at this point cannot be the starting center on a championship team unless you get a lot of talent around one of those two guys, which of course they're going to, but really they need to bring in a center that gives them some size and can stretch the floor. When you're going to have Ben Simmons on the court, you need a three-point shooting center. They don't have to shoot great from there. They've just got to be able to step out and be respectable from a three-point distance, make things happen, which is another issue with Drummond and Claxton. They're not really guys that are going to step out beyond the perimeter and shoot those threes. So bringing in a big for me is the number one priority they have to do after, of course, bringing back Kyrie Irving. Now, also in that case, they do have a first-round pick at pick 23 from the Philadelphia 76ers. They do not have their own pick. That goes to Houston this year, but that first-round pick they could either get this year or next year from the Sixers, so maybe they defer it. But honestly, if I'm them, I'd probably just take it. You could get a young big maybe that can help you out in that department, even if they aren't your starting center, just give you more depth if you don't want to bring back like a Drummond or a Nick Claxton if he gets too much money. So that's a way that they could use that first round pick, or use that pick in a trade to try and bring in a center. One of those two options. However, I kind of like the idea of bringing in a really young and cheap center in the draft if there's someone you like, maybe even trading up to get someone, something like that. Also, something else to kind of keep in mind is they're going to have Joe Harris back after this season. He left the year with an injury. I forget what it was. I think it was a knee thing, or maybe it was a hip. One of those two things. But Joe Harris missed a lot of this year, and his shooting is super important for this team, especially, like I said, when you bring in Ben Simmons. Having a guy like Joe Harris who, assuming he gets back to form, can hit 40% of his threes is going to be super valuable for this roster. So him coming back and overall just another year of building chemistry, I think the Nets are going to be right back in the championship picture. If Ben Simmons is healthy, Kyrie and KD are healthy, and you bring in some like decent role players, of course, like I mentioned, you've got Claxton and Drummond going. Bruce Brown is someone who is expiring, so they're going to have to sign him back. And honestly, I don't know if they're going to have the money to do so because Bruce Brown he really showed out in that first round series. So I think some team is going to give him some money. They've got Patty Mills, who is a player option. So whether he accepts or denies that, we will see. I would maybe assume he would accept it. It kind of seemed like he was happy with his role, but maybe if he wants more money and he gets more somewhere else, he could go out and do that. But to me, I feel like Patty Mills is probably back. So they do have some decisions to make on the role player front, but if they bring in some solid guys, like they probably will do, because it is Brooklyn, it's in New York, they've got championship aspirations, so I think that they will be able to bring some guys back and bring guys in. Overall, I think Brooklyn's going to be right back in the championship picture. There is a lot of stuff to monitor, though, of course, with the Steve Nash situation, Ben Simmons, what are they doing to bring in role players, and KD and Kyrie, of course, how are they going to mesh going forward? Are they going to be able to lead this team to a championship? I still think the answer is yes, if you get decent enough role players around them. I think a lot of people are overreacting to the way that this season went because it really was a weird and just overall strange year. This was very unconventional. You typically don't see the vaccination stuff, the injuries. Assuming they're able to stay healthy, which honestly is a big if, the Nets will be right back in championship contention next season, in my opinion. So that's what's next for the Brooklyn Nets. Let me know what you think they should do in the comment section below and what your prediction is for them, whether it's in this offseason or heading into next year. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you when another team gets eliminated to make more of these videos. I'll see y'all later. Everyone,